Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I've just been advised to wait a couple of more minutes as we are still waiting for a few people to arrive. So we'll get going in maybe 2-3 minutes. You comfortably seated? I hope. All right, shall we get going then? Hello everyone and welcome to this panel discussion on women and the future of STEM. And if you're wondering what STEM is, it stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths. My name is Marcus Carlson. In civilian life, I was almost about to say, I am a presenter and business editor at France 24 Television, an international news channel. As I say, we are here to talk about women in STEM professions, and we're here to talk about why women tend to be underrepresented in STEM professions and also in STEM education, for that matter, preceding the professional life. Now, this figures show that only around 1 out of 10 science and engineering graduates in OECD countries are women. In a moment or so, we're going to get an introduction from Marie Kiviniemi, the Deputy Secretary General of the OECD. She's going to set the scene for us, if you will. Before that, though, let me introduce you to the panel participants in today's discussion. First of all, Ronnie Goldberg is Senior Counsel at the United States Council for International Business, which means that she essentially represents American businesses abroad. That's correct, I hope.
Yes, this is on. But I'm here also representing the BIAC, the Business Industry Advisory Committee to the OECD. So I hope I'll be presenting a BIAC perspective as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Haruna Yoshida is the Vice Chair of the Board of Councillors at Keidan Ren. Apologies for my pronunciation, which is basically Japan's business association, which has a membership of more than 1,400 different companies. So we have the business perspective certainly well represented on this panel. Alejandra Sepulveda is the Executive Director of Comunidad Mujer, another apology for my pronunciation. That organization is from Chile. It's an organization that promotes women's rights in areas like education, in the job market, and also in politics. Last but not least, we have Olivier Crozet. He's Director of Studies at École 42, or School 42, as I suppose you would translate it into English as. It is a school here in France that focuses on computer programming, and it also focuses on peer-to-peer teaching. It's a very interesting project that's been underway now for what, 2-3 years? 2013 is when you kicked off, right?
Yes, the project started in 2013 for now 3 years, and actually it's also starting in the United States.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, indeed. Silicon Valley, here we come. As I said earlier, we're going to let Marie Kiviniemi set the scene for us. She's got some interesting facts and figures from an OECD perspective for us.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this seminar. Also, on my behalf, happy to see you all here. And as you know, the subject of this panel discussion is Women and the Future of STEM, and I'm really going to show some facts and figures and set the scene based on OECD work on gender issues. And in particular, our 2015 report, the ABC of Gender Equality in Education, which outlines actions to close gender gaps in STEM fields. But let me start off by saying gender equality is not only about ensuring a fair society, it makes good economic sense. We all know that progress in female educational attainment and increases in women's employment are absolutely crucial for economic growth. And when it comes to education, OECD countries have made significant progress in narrowing or closing long-standing gender gaps. Not only are more young women than ever before participating in formal education, over the past decade, the gender gap in educational attainment has been inverted. Young women are now more likely than men to have completed tertiary studies, but however, other gender gaps are opening up. Girls and young women are still far less likely than men to either study or work in the areas of STEM. So, what is then the current representation of women in STEM subjects and occupations? I'll show you some figures here. You see here really that men and women do not study in the same fields. Women only accounted for 28% of tertiary degrees recipients in engineering and 20% in computing. But women counted for 78% in education and 74% in health. And also, when we have a look at men and women's choices when they have graduated in their same field, they really often make different occupational choices. About 2/3 of the female graduates who studied humanities work as teachers, compared with around half of male graduates. In contrast, 71% of male graduates from sciences work as professionals in physics, mathematics, and engineering, as opposed to only 43% of females graduating from the same subject area. So here some figures telling you the facts where we stand now, but I'm sure that you already knew approximately how the figures are. But then when we go behind these figures and have a look at some reasons why women feel less inclined to pursue STEM subjects and careers. Based on our surveys, especially this ABC of gender equality in education, we know that gender differences in the fields of study are not related to inherent abilities, but instead are direct products of the students' attitudes, behavior, and self-confidence. This PISA data of ours show that girls are less confident about their mathematics ability and feel more anxious about the subject. On average, as you can see here, girls are 9 percentage points more likely than boys to say that they are just not good at mathematics. But then boys really say more often than girls that I learn mathematics quickly. So there's a clear difference between boys and girls here. Girls also express lower levels of confidence in their ability to learn science. This is although our PISA performance shows that they perform equal to that of boys. On average, they are 7 percentage points less likely than boys to say that they can usually give good answers to test questions in science. So, to sum up, avoiding STEM fields really reflect girls' lack of confidence, not ability. And here you can see the same results as in the previous slide. Boys' self-confidence is much bigger. Not hugely bigger, but it's clearly bigger than girls. But then when we have a look at the attitudes and perceptions among parents and teachers, which also influence the choice of field of study. PISA data shows that parents are more likely to expect their sons rather than their daughters to enter a STEM career, even when boys and girls perform equally well in school. And here you can see from different countries the data, so much more bigger share of parents think that they boys really could enter STEM careers, and they don't feel the same for their daughters. And you can see that in other countries rather huge gender gaps. Hungary 28%, but in some countries the gap is much smaller, like in Korea. As a result, at age 15, girls and boys already have very different expectations about their future careers. And far more boys than girls expect to pursue a career in engineering or computing. On average, among OECD countries, less than 5% of 15-year-old girls contemplate pursuing STEM careers compared to 18% of 15-year-old boys. So 5% of girls, 18% of boys. So there really is, in all the countries, quite wide gender gap, and in average indeed. So here you saw, based on our surveys, some reasons behind this, why that is the fact that boys choose STEM careers and studying there much more often than girls. But then the question, what to do? OECD recommendations, that's what we always do based on our research. We always try to find solutions, but as you can see here, there's no simple answer, no silver bullet. So what is needed is a very comprehensive set of policy actions, and we have put those here in three different pillars. First pillar, we have to attract more women into STEM fields, and that happens firstly by reviewing educational resources to avoid conveying stereotype representations of what men and women are good at. So you have to have an eye on the teaching material. And in very few, for example, EU countries, you review the teaching materials, but that should be the case in, of course, all the countries. Second, what should be done is to help teachers become aware of and address gender stereotypes in their pedagogy. In Germany, for example, they have launched a training tool to help eradicate stereotypes based on gender, culture and religion in textbooks. Thirdly, promote female role models in STEM fields and men in caring professions. So both are needed. You have to have a look at that, how you attract boys to choose other careers too, not only have the eye on attracting women into STEM fields. Fourth, ensure that boys and girls acquire better information about educational and career pathways through orientation programs. And some countries like Germany, Luxembourg, Austria, Poland, they organize Girls' Days, where companies and research institutions invite girls for visits to introduce them to technical jobs and careers. And lastly, when it comes to attracting more women into STEM fields, help girls to get hands-on experience about future study and career opportunities. And then the second block of recommendations when it comes to retaining women in STEM careers. First, we need to make sure that research grants allow for flexibility relative to the researcher's life events. And secondly, we should provide paid parental leave and access to childcare to researchers, and not only for mothers, but also for fathers. A concrete example is that Australian Research Council provides paid maternity leave and part-time appointments for all fellowships. And of course, the third block of recommendations, you have to also engage employers. Employers need to ensure that women have fair access to career development opportunities, training and sponsoring. They should also provide training against implicit gender biases, and gender diversity has to be made a corporate priority. So, ladies and gentlemen, with these words, facts and figures and recommendations, I wanted to set the scene for the panel discussions, and I really wish a very lively discussion and also concrete recommendations for all the countries to achieve better results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mari Kiviniemi, the Deputy Secretary General of the OECD. Okay, so now it's our job to take this job onwards, and that was a very interesting presentation from my perspective. It really set the scene for how there are different expectations, essentially, on a lot of girls when they choose a career, and also, I suppose, different preoccupations as well. Let's pick up this discussion, and just before we do, we will be taking questions from the audience in around about maybe 45 minutes time or so, so you can certainly address our panel participants at that point. Please make sure at that point that your questions are actually questions and not statements, because they tend to go on forever. So a maximum 1 minute, and also remember to introduce yourself beforehand. You can also ask questions via the IT tool for this conference, Ysembly, so you can use your smartphones and other gadgets to put forward your questions. Let's kick off the discussion, however, and I wanted to start with you, Haruna Yoshida. Now, you've worked in technology, you've worked in the communication sector for some time. You work in Japan as well. Tell us about that experience, and if you, as a woman, encounter difficulties on the basis that you are a woman in the technology sector, in the communications field.
Yes, you woke me up. I just arrived from Asia and this morning, so that sorry about my jet lag, and if I was a little slow response and everything. But besides of the Keidanren job, my main job is that I'm running the British Telecom business unit in Japan. I'm a CEO of BT in Japan. I'm in this industry for quarter century, even though I look like 25 years. Anyway, and I think, right, let me explain a little bit of my experience. And from my experience, I think that this digital age, industrial 4.0, industrial revolution 4, so whatever you call it, is big favor for female, such a female-friendly, industry, I think. Digital nature is all about collaboration, inclusiveness, fairness, open, agility, quick to change, all those things that female has as a nature, I think. That's I cannot reiterate enough. So this is a big favor, big tailwind for us. You know, not coincidentally, Japan's growth strategy that Mr. Abe, Prime Minister Mr. Abe lay out is, you know, he obviously lay out several things. But mainly I would say two things. Female advancement in business and also this technology, especially this industrial 4.0, get on and ride on the wave. That's what he insists. What is going on in Japan? Aging society, decreasing population. This demographic challenge is fundamental showstopper for our growth. We are losing 30 million workforce in next 50 years. You know, going nowhere. And Prime Minister looked around and said, wow, wake up sleeping all these smart beauties, right? That's where we are. As you see that gap analysis of, you know, World Economic Forum and all these statistics said that we are 101 place. It's such a shame for developed countries. We are the worst probably any developed countries. So having said that, that's a margin that we can grow. Wake up, you know, sleeping smart beauty is right. So those two big strategy, growth focus, will be Japan game changer. And, you know, from my experience, why not? This digital world, it's all about cyber and virtual. All you need is here, brain.
What is the female participation rate, though, in the Japanese tech sector? What's the status
You
quo
better
at the
not
moment?
ask. You know, what I don't have that, you know, quite figure right now, but, you know, what I was told is one of the lowest in any developed countries. So it is quite low. It's beyond the STEM. Overall, we are so low. Participation in that you know, workplace is very, very low. But there is also is a reason why, right? You know, 3.4 million female who wants to work cannot work because of the situation of their household duties. 500,000 of children and also elderly is queuing for care center. Who is taking care of them? Think about it. You know, those are the things, right? And also the our work style is quite 17th century, I would say. Working from 9 to 9, commuting 2 hours, and, you know, drinking habit after work, weekend golfing with customers still is at customers entertainment, all those things. How can you have the work-life balance? And lastly, I would, you know, insist, if you are asking for female advancement in workplace, then I have to also, or we also have to ask, male advancement in household. We have to share, right? But that's not there yet. So lots to do. However, good news is that the Prime Minister leadership is there, and final business sector and, you know, public sector hand in hand together lay out all those things that we need to improve. Getting there.
Ronnie Goldberg, I want to turn to you. I think we are to a certain extent preaching to the choir here, but could you tell us why this matters? Why, from your perspective, it matters that there are as many female engineers as male engineers? As I say, we're preaching to the choir here, but how do you make the argument in business life and to business people and to politicians and policymakers for that matter?
Well, I'll start off answering that question with a little anecdote about why it matters to me personally. I, not so long ago, was visiting my 8-year-old granddaughter, and I suggested to her that we read a story before she went to bed together. I had brought her one of my favorite childhood books, and she said to me in a tone of great disdain, "Oh, Grandma, I don't do fiction. Can we do some math problems?" Now, I have to admit, part of me was yelling, "Yay, STEM." Another part was a little sad that I couldn't share my books with her, but mainly what is important is that she be who she wants to be and not be discouraged, whether it's to be a mathematician or a scientist or a doctor or a teacher or whatever. So STEM is important, and I'll come to why it's important professionally and to our economies in a minute. But I think in this whole gender debate, what's equally important is that all of us, girls and boys, young women and young men, have the ability to fulfill whatever their particular talents and desires are, and which means in part beating back the kind of barriers that Mari was describing, some of them unconscious in our families, in our schools, and in our societies. Why is STEM important, women in STEM, to our economies? Well, you all have heard about the skills gap. The OECD has done a great deal of work on this. The companies that belong to my business association in the US and that belong around the OECD area to our BIAC counterparts are, many of them in many countries, are unable to find employees with the STEM skills that the jobs, not just the jobs of the future, certainly the jobs of the future, but the jobs of now require. So STEM is very important for the technological future that's going to fuel our economic growth. And finally, I'd say, to build on one of the OECD recommendations on making gender diversity a corporate priority, increasingly companies are realizing that in order to fulfill their own investment and growth aspirations, they have to attract the best talent. And if 50% of the talent out there does not aspire to your business or drops out along the way, then that's bad business. So I think from every perspective, from an individual perspective for all of us as parents and as citizens, from the perspective of our economies, and from the perspective of our companies, maximizing the ability of women to contribute to STEM professions just makes complete sense.
All right, thank you very much, Ronnie. And I want to move to Olivier Crozet next as we work our way down the panel, so to speak. So you're an educational professional. Once again, you're from École 42 or 42, the school here in Paris. What does it look like at your school? What is the gender balance or imbalance, as it may be, at your school?
Well, actually in School 42, the gender balance is not so good, but maybe a little bit more of context, of French context, can help here. In France, we have, I would say, classical engineering school, and these engineering schools, it's 55% rate. It's not so bad. It used to be a lower rate, and I think on a recent poll, it's still increasing, so it's encouraging. But School 42 is an IT school, an information technology school, and in all the other French IT school, the gender balance and the rate is 3 to 5% of girls versus boys. And in School 42, we had that chance that we reached a 10% rate, and it's not so bad after all. We were wondering why we had this rate. The School 42 is actually a UFO, can I say that, in the academic and education in France, because it's completely free. It's in higher education from 18 to 30 years old. It's completely free. We don't have any teacher, and our education and our pedagogy is based on what we call peer learning and also peer review. So students need to collaborate. They need to try to discuss between themselves to solve problems. And we notice that to have a different point of view is very interesting and is increasing collective intelligence. And it's also we'd had some feedbacks from companies who have our students in internship, or companies who hire our students, and they said, "Hey, your students are thinking differently, and it's a very interesting and important assets for companies. It's an important assets for all the IT market, and I think all the French economy too." So increasing this creativity increase means more innovation in companies and means more productivity. It was the main theme this morning of Mr. Secretary General about inequalities and productivity. And I think reducing the gender balance, the gender inequality, can lead to more productivity. And we had this evaluation of our selection process, and we noticed that at the beginning of the selection process, we already have this rate of 10% of girls who apply to School 42. And at the end of the selection process, we still had this 10% rate. So meaning at the first view for us that for women, IT is it works just like for men. And we'll took a look a little bit deeper in these statistics, and we just noted that we have a higher rate of women who give up in the early process of this, in the early stage of the selection process, and then a higher rate of women that succeed at the end of the selection process to equals the rate from the beginning and the end of the selection process, meaning that actually women are better than men in IT, and it's mainly a cultural issue and a problem before our selection process.
Well, let's just get the figures right. So you were saying that around about 40% of applicants are women, but the 10%.
No, only 10% of women are applicants.
Yeah.
But they give up more easily, meaning there is a cultural problem, maybe. Mm-hmm. But for all the women who did not give up and end the selection process, we have a better results.
All right, thank you very much indeed for that clarification. Alejandra Sepulveda, we got figures from Mari, and we got a lot of important data. But what, in your opinion, what in your opinion is the reason for women participating less in STEM professions and also STEM education? Talk us through from your perspective from Chile.
Yes, I think that the first thing is a cultural problem. We have gender stereotypes since the early childhood, and it's not only about if you use pink or blue clothes. It's also about what are the attitudes that we are teaching different men, boys and girls, like boldness, leadership, risk-taking, that are more promoting for boys than for girls. And I think that these attitudes finally transcend the educational life and also became important in labor.
So what starts in very early childhood is carried through all your professional life, essentially.
Yes. Women are less confident than men, and we in our work with companies we see them very clearly, and well, I can show you a campaign that we ran in Chile for put a spotlight in that stereotypes that begin earlier and affect the educational decisions, that the vocational decisions that men and women did. So
All
we
right,
can-
let's take a look at that video, shall we?
Now we are using this spot with our work in some schools. We are working with all the community, parents, teachers, and students to show this bias and be more awareness about this, because I think the start of inequality is in this period of the life.
All right, we've talked about the status quo. Then we've talked a little bit about how we've actually come to where we are at the moment when it comes to female participation in STEM professions. Let's work our way forward from here then. And Alejandra, I want to start then with you. You were talking about how you're taking action in order to try to change attitudes. Could you give us a specific example of how you're trying to do that? Because it's a lot easier said than done, certainly, to change attitudes and parental expectations. Tell us how you are practically going about it.
Yes, we are doing a lot of things. We use some materials in classroom, guidelines. We have a test of unconscious bias that we apply to different persons and show them what is operating now. Why do you think about boys linked with STEM, and why do you not think girls linked to STEM, and you are always related them to maternal activities? Because we have in Chile very segmentation education and labor too. The women today are working in education, in social service, in health, and men are working in engineering, for example. So we have a huge problem, and a way to start working with is this campaign, and we are also doing different things. We promote, for example, quotas in the access of in university for women in the engineering faculty. We need to have more role models, and we use role models to promote the access to these careers. So it's a cultural problem, and it's important to establish this issue. And also in companies, we're doing different things like promoting gender diversity in high positional levels. We are doing mentoring programs. We are promoting more women in boards, in public sector and in private sector. And we are doing, I don't know, how can I say it? I think this is a systemic problem, so we have to have systemic solutions too.
Haruna Yoshida, I want to put that same question to you. How do you think that you change? How does one change culture, so to speak? How does one change expectations?
Uh, a lot of things that we have to do in Japan perspective. You know, we are talking about building the civilized society in jungle. So we need to do a lot. However, you know, something that we already have done is that now a government sector and a business sector tag match each other, and you know, couple of years, we provided STEM area business sector open house in the summer vacation, inviting the students. And last year, thousands of students, girl students, along with parents, came to visit, you know, business sector, corporate. And we showed our STEM area, like a research area, or, you know, female engineering, actually doing a job, make a presentation. So that way they have some image, right? How these, you know, mathematics and science that they are studying in school, we relate to actually in, you know, commercial sector, and how they are contributing those machines and, you know, technologies contribute to that, that the society's better future. So we've done this. So that's just have them some image, future image, right? So that's one thing. But you know what? I think role model is far most important. It's youngsters, net age, come from all about medias and what they're seeing and everything. You know, I had a recent example, fight with my daughter. My daughter said that all of a sudden, Mom, I want to be a lawyer. Okay. Why? And she said, because George Clooney's new wife is so gorgeous, right? That's how it works. She doesn't listen to mom. Does she listen to teachers? That's how they come up. And I said, no, you go to engineering area, and especially cyber security, because I know how much I am paying for my employee. Cyber security expert worldwide is in, you know, big shortage. For you to have security specialists, you have to pay a lot. So I told her, you know, cyber security, you can earn more than lawyer. But then she consulted that with her boyfriend. And her boyfriend perspective, cybersecurity expert, nah, that's not cute. I mean, you see, these are actual conversation going on there. How we sell them, maybe we have to think. Image building, any company will do, right? That we must have to, you know, we probably have to invest. Maybe we tag up together with Hollywood movie for gorgeous, I don't know, STEM field, female or something. I don't know. We have to change the perception fundamentally.
Ronnie Goldberg, do you agree with that? I mean, do you think that there are enough role models for your granddaughter out there when it comes to STEM?
Actually, I focus more on George Clooney than his wife.
I focus more on Amal, but
There are lots of role models out there. There are a lot of very successful women in STEM professions, as well as in other professions. But equally, we know that many workplaces are not conducive to developing women to their full potential. Recently, Silicon Valley has been in the news a lot, and there's a idea that there's something about the culture of the IT industry in particular that is hostile to women. BIAC has done, as I said before, a lot of work, which is still ongoing, on what we call harnessing the gender dividend, making the business case for women, economic empowerment. I'll just flash the cover of our first publication called Putting All Our Minds to Work. And the lessons, I think, are the same for STEM professions as for any professions. It's very important for companies to change their culture in many cases. And that BIAC has provided what we call a toolkit for companies that want to empower the women in their workforce and prevent the leaky pipeline. And it comes down to things like, first of all, taking ownership at the top, but making sure that the message pervades the entire company. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So there has to be a metric around women's development in the company. There have to be mentorship mentorship programs. So there are a lot of things that companies can do to change their culture and to empower the women who work there and to help them to stay in the workforce. Now, there are also, businesses can't do it alone. There has to be an enabling public policy framework. Women have to have a place to put their children, right? There have to be incentives for fathers to stay home as well and to share domestic duties. So this is a society-wide joint effort, I think.
I want to talk a little bit about quotas, which is often a controversial point because a lot of people are against quotas, a lot of people are for quotas for various different reasons. There is also a debate on where you should put the quotas. Olivier Crozet, I want to turn to you then. Should there be quotas in STEM fields, for instance, at your university when it comes to, or at your school, when it comes to people applying? Should there be quotas in business life, so to speak, on boards and elsewhere? What's your opinion on that?
Well, my personal point of view is that quotas are also a kind of discrimination, and it can be a useful tool at the beginning to initiate a major change in the state of mind, because we are all talking about changing society, changing the state of mind of everyone, and I think it can lead to a more natural balance between men and women. But from my point of view, at the end, this kind of quota system should disappear, and it should be natural for everyone in their mind that boys and girls, if there is no justification, because men and women are different. For example, there is not a problem, there is no debate about, for example, Olympic Games. We have men and we have women, and yes, we have difference, but we have to learn how to deal with this difference, and when this difference is relevant or not. And it's mainly an education issue and a big change in the state of mind. That's why, from my perspective, quotas should disappear at one point.
But would you be, instance, let me ask the question in a different way. Would you be ready to say that, okay, at 42, we want 25% of our students or 30% of our students to be women?
The problem right now is that we can't. We don't have 25% of women that apply to 42, and it would just mean that we will have empty seats in our rooms, okay, in our computer rooms. So it's right now we can't apply this mechanism.
I did a little straw poll of our participants earlier when it comes to quotas and whether or not they were sort of in favor or against it in principle. So I know that you, Haruna, Yoshida, you're not necessarily in favor of them. Tell us why.
No. So for education, right, you can impose a quota, but if students are not studying, and what's the point? So that's something, I have to tell to the education sector. Quota, then if you have the headcounts for 25%, but kids are not interested in studying, that's not a point. So for education system, I think that the teacher has to be a little bit more entertaining, and that the school classroom has to be a little bit more interesting for us to attract them, right? So that's one thing. For business sector, I would say if we have to be imposed any quota, that's a big shame. That's my personal view, because when it comes to Japan, it's really the growth strategy, our sustainable growth business strategy, right? Facing that situation, decreasing population, we're losing that workforce significantly. That's a showstopper. As any other business sector, you have to come up with your own growth strategy, not anyone imposing you. Each one of the corporate has different strategy, and part of that, the resource planning is very important strategy that has to come from you, especially the CEO leadership. So in Japan, we didn't take quota system, but rather voluntarily. However, what has happening in Japan from this April, first time, female empowerment bill passed through. So all large corporation holds more than 301 employee has to publish and make it transparent, your plan, your situation, your plan, what's the gap. So at least for market investor perspective, we will know this company's growth strategy so that you can decide whether you want to invest further or not, right? Transparent. But this is each company ought to, be transparent. Very important. It's a corporate BCP.
Alejandra, I know that you are for quotas. Tell us why. Tell us the other side of the coin.
Yes, in our organization, we support and promote quotas and mandatory quotas
In what fields? In
in
education or in?
politics, in business, in education, in different ways, because you must have mandatory or volunteers quotas. But it's important when you have a huge inequity in Chile. We are underrepresentation in all these fields. In business, we are in boards. Women are represented by 6%. It's a very few percent of representation, and we think, and the evidence, the international evidence shows us that is a very effective measure to accelerate change and transformation, and promote the cultural change too. You don't need quotas forever. You need quotas when you have to balance the field. And it is not discriminating men. It's about how you can achieve gender equality. And we have an experience that is very important in Chile, because we ran political reforms about these 2 years ago. We changed the electoral system, and we have now quotas to candidates for parliamentary. And it's very simple. If the voters have more opportunities to choose one or another candidates, and you have a more diversity list of candidates, it will be better. It will be a better democracy. And I think in business, it's important, because we need to promote more diversity in the decision making. And in Chile, the fact is that women are not in this field, so we need to do something more pushing, I think.
Ronnie Goldberg, what are your thoughts when it comes to quotas? I just want to field your opinion as well.
Well, quotas are one tool, but I think it's a mistake to think that they're a panacea. Not that I'm suggesting you do think they're a panacea. They're often a blunt instrument. In some countries, they've been adopted, and with mixed results. But I think they should be considered as one of a number of tools. For example, Olivier, if it wasn't a quota that you must have X number or X percentage of female students by a certain date, but you were asked to sort of develop a plan for reaching certain targets. You might start to think about how to appeal more to young women in your marketing or in your outreach.
Actually, we already did. We had some partnerships with associations of girls and IT. And we made recently an experiment which is called Wi-Fi. It's a play on word with the French word Wi-Fi, which stands for Wi-Fi, and Fi, which stands for girls. We had teenagers, only girls, for 1 week, and trying to learn them how to code. And the main purpose was not to that they learned a specific language at the end of the week, but they changed their point of view and their state of mind about girls and what they thought before and what they thought after about IT and what kind of job it is and what kind of perspectives it can open to her, that it's accessible for girls too. And that's what it was our main point, because actually we can't change anything during the curriculum. For our perspective, everything is happening before in the early education in France.
All right, so we've had sort of arguments in favor and arguments against quotas. I want to turn a little bit to what we've been talking about earlier, how perhaps expectations and cultures are created very early on in life. And I want to talk about what can be done very early on in life in order to perhaps change girls' outlook when it comes to their careers. Do you think policymakers should take action to introduce, for instance, computer science at a much earlier age, which has kind of happened in the UK? We've seen politicians taking action to instill classes for girls when it comes to computer science. Is that a good way to start, or how do we go about it? What should policymakers do from a very early age in order to change, once again, expectations and culture? Ronnie?
Well, sure. I mean, it starts with basic education, doesn't it? So, but again, it's not just for girls. I think there needs to be some rethinking of curricula for both boys and girls. Not just to ensure that the sciences or computer skills are taught and begun early, but to help children develop the soft skills that are going to be needed for successful careers, flexibility, creativity in their thinking, and so on. So I think that's a no regrets policy for the educational system.
Sorry to interrupt you, but Olivier, what's your thinking about that? Because you were saying before that there are a lot fewer women applicants than there are male applicants to 42.
That's right. Yeah.
How do you change that?
Yes,
How do you increase the pipeline, so to speak?
Learning code in early stage, starting in primary school, maybe not with a specific language, but at least the logic of programming, the mindset of programming. I think it's interesting for all the economy, because it develops creativity, because it develops ability to solve problem, to adapt. I think it's the new state of mind of the new and the digital economy, and this must be taught early. And I think it can be also a lever to engage more women in STEM too. I think it can be a good policy for states to develop this kind of education.
All right. What about later on in life? We've talked. Almost all of you mentioned work-life balance and how policymakers need to create situations where you can actually take care of your family and work within STEM and in STEM at the same time. Haruna Yoshida, what would your advice be to policymakers in Japan? What needs to happen?
Uh, I think that the one way to pitch to a female young student for STEM area is that this digital world, you can definitely have a work-life balance because the space and time difference is not the matter. You know, it's all about meritocracy, all about your new idea. And digital world will do other things. As far as you have PC and computer, you have the net access. You could get things done, right? That's what was the point of me asking my daughter to cybersecurity expert, because if it's a lawyer, you have to go to court. You probably have to see customer. That you physically go there. And my personal experience that as a single mother, it was a painful moment when the moment of your client, the meeting, then usually your daughter in such a moment gets sick. How you have to choose, right? You have to divide your, if you are living in the physical world, you have to divide your body and you have to choose. You cannot do that. You have to really choose either the other. In the physical world, you get to experience the life parallel different, you know what I mean? You can decide either you have to physically be there or virtually there. You can do both. That's the digital 4.0 era all about, right? That's why this is so multiple, so complex, so global, so everything. So think about it. And that's a female nature. He wants to have family. He wants to have a happy life. He wants to have a kids. That's in your DNA. How you can address for that, your life wish, right? So I usually talk, pitch that part. If you are in a digital space, digital industry, you get lots of flexibility. So that's another thing that I'm telling to the government while we are building all those daycare centers, thousands of them, right? You can do today is flex working, teleworking, because look at the technology. That's a new age's way of work supposed to be. We are still living in the 19th century. That we have to fix.
Alejandra, let me ask the same question to you then, because when Mari was here earlier, she told us how female STEM graduates are less likely to pursue a STEM career than male STEM graduates are. What specifically can be done about that? What do you want to see from policymakers' side in order to improve that? Are there any targeted measures, so to speak, that can improve the numbers essentially?
Yes, I think it's important for men and women to have balance in their careers and in personal life. Last year, I went to a university and a meeting with a student in engineering field, men and women, and only women ask me, how can I have a work-life balance? Men doesn't ask me about it. And it's very important because we can achieve more women in this field, but how can we retain in this field? And I think that the most important measure is to have co-responsibility. We need to pay more attention to the life cycle of men and women. When you are young, you want to have a family, you plan to have kids, and it would be a good news, not a bad news if you must to write a paper and you can do it because you have this other thing that is a priority for you. So I think we need to think about talents. We think about talents. Men and women have a lot of skills, and how can we retain this skill in the labor market? I in Chile, I can speak more about Chile. We have a lot of women that go out to the went to or go to the private life because they don't have any chance to balance their work and family life. So it's an important thing. We have 1.3 million women that can work, but they say they can do it because of personal and family activities. So.
All right, at this point, I want to turn to the audience and see whether or not any audience member wants to come in, and I can see that there are already. Let's see if we can get a roving microphone to... There we go. And please, once again, a general announcement. Please make sure that you introduce yourself at the very start, and also make sure that your question is actually a question and not a statement. That will help me out immensely.
All right, fine. My name's Pam Jonas, and I'm from Australia. In Australia, women are overrepresented in some STEM areas, for example, nursing, biological sciences, medical research. They're directed into the soft sciences, which are not recognised as STEM in the same way that engineering and computing are. So we continue to reinforce the view that girls' science is of less value. So 2 questions. What can we do about changing the perception of the sciences that women are engaged in are real maths and sciences, as well as getting them involved in the hard sciences? And the STEM areas that women are involved in, why don't we celebrate those? And why are women's participation in engineering computing the measures for their involvement?
All right, and does anyone want to address those questions from the get-go? Okay, I suppose the question was, in Australia, there are areas of sciences where women are actually overrepresented. Did I get that correct? I do not remember what exactly those areas was.
Okay. Women are overrepresented in what we call the soft sciences, biology, medical research, nursing, those sorts of sciences, not in the physics and the chem and the whatever. So why don't we value the types of sciences that women are involved in? Because without women in the biological sciences, we wouldn't have a nursing workforce. We wouldn't have medical researchers. Why don't we celebrate where they are and also try and get them involved in where they're not? But why is there a difference between engineering and computing and medical science?
Okay. So we're talking about values here once more. Alejandra, where?
I think you are right. I think we extreme our arguments because we need to have more women in engineering and in technology. But I think we need to have all the talents in all the fields, and biologic and all the careers and works that it related to medicine, for example, is a very important thing. So now, for example, we are promoting role models of men in nursing. We are trying to do this type of game to have more diversity in all the fields. But yeah, I think you are right.
Anyone else? All right, let's go to the next question. The lady in white who's got the microphone, it's probably easier that way.
Hi, I'm Sam. I work at Microsoft, but I'm here as part of the New Zealand Youth Delegation. We've talked about attracting women to STEM quite a lot. What are we doing once we get into their career so they actually stay in STEM? What are we doing to address unconscious bias? What are we doing to create role models out of them? Because I completely agree that we don't have role models in STEM at the moment. Yeah.
Ronnie?
Well, I think one thing is shedding light on the conditions that discourage women from staying in. And often, at least in the United States, and at least some of the publicity that's surrounded this issue lately, once you shed light, it's a pretty unflattering picture of the workplace situation. Hopefully, shedding light creating a lot of attention around these issues, whether it's harassment, whether it's unreasonable demands to work unsociable hours, whether it's out and out discrimination, whether it's unequal pay for equal jobs, etc. Hopefully shedding light on these will itself encourage some change. But you've put your finger on the problem. There are workplace problems that do need to be addressed. The first thing is to uncover them and shed light on them.
Anyone else?
I like to mention.
Yes,
Is that
certainly.
okay? I think it's in Japan, especially, right? To challenge that corporate culture. The leadership far most important when you are transforming anything. Transforming leadership, right? That's far most important thing. He has to own the issue and cascade to he or she. Well, there you go. She is really saying things, get things done. That has to be done. That the leadership, if it's not that they are going nowhere, right? So that's the first thing, and also role model. Let's intentionally create role model. That's what Japan is doing right now. So what I started in Keidanren, the biggest business organization, is that there are few female first in history board members. I collect those and ask top leaders of Japan large corporation give a mentorship, special mentorship for those small group, because if those first pioneer, set of pioneer, is not successful and happy, and who follows, right? So that's an investment we are doing, especially intentionally. So I mean, we have to shape intentionally that the first to cut off the world, right? We wanted to see in the future. That's the focus of leadership and everybody, right?
All right, before we continue with the questions, I just wanted to mention a few comments that we're getting in through Y-Assembly. And as you almost might expect, quotas seem to be a thing that people are talking about on Y-Assembly as well. For instance, Vincent thinks that to attract women to STEM, only quotas will not be sufficient. And also, another person, Joanna, says that there should be 50% women in STEM because everyone has the same opportunities and thus skills. Put quotas on opportunities, but not on jobs, which I suppose is sort of an interesting play in there as well. Let's continue with, I just wanted to leave that with you. Let's continue with questions from the audience.
Hello, my name is Nancy Gomez. Thank you for your presentation. I have actually two questions, one for Chile and one for more general. So after your campaign, what kind of impact did you what impact did you expect after that? Can you tell more about figures, because it's about figures? And on the other hand, maybe to be engineer for women is not that sexy, but to work for a startup today is more sexy. So is there a way where we can attract more engineers? I am in the field of engineering and finance, and I had 2 women engineers, and I attracted them and tried to do a network in my own small SMEs. So it's very hard. So do you have examples? Thank you.
Alejandra, should we start with you?
I will answer. This campaign was have a lot of goals, but one of them was to convince a Ministry of Education to do something about gender stereotypes in classroom. So now we are working with this ministry to running a new campaign that will be show with specific materials in all the country, and showing testimonies of role models, men in masculine fields and women in masculine fields and men in the other ones. It's today we are talking about how can we put some indicators to follow the impact of this campaign. I think it's important to do that, but we are having this approach for the moment.
All right. The second question there is how you attract women engineers to essentially, well, pursuing their careers in engineering and, for instance, in startups. Haruno.
Yes, that's good point. But in Japan, startups entrepreneur is very rare, right? So that's a problem. They can't imagine what job is available. But recently, I met one young girl who just graduated university, Japanese girl, and become successful as an entrepreneur. She was a programmer. And she thought, look around, and she thought, there's a strange things that are happening. Every Tuesday, that the hairdresser standing on the street and asking for a model so that he or she can practice that hair cutting, right? And this is interesting, the habit of Japanese, that hair industry. And she thought, maybe she can help. And she programmed the software, and she created a website where that, who wants to have the free haircut, right? But hair, even though it's a lousy haircut, it grows. So, you just stay there like 2 months or something. And then, she started collecting the thousands of female application. And she started, networking together with a hair shop. And she started making money out of it. But that's an idea, right? But you would never even imagine that what's available there. So that's a problem. So one TV show put the spotlight on her.
I was just going to ask, is she now a role model? Is she one of the role models
Right, she
that are
is
so badly
a role
needed?
model, right? So we need not just one, or 2 or 3, and 30 and 40s of those. But it's getting there. I think all we need is that if we found those success model, let's get the spotlight on her or on him and celebrate it. So that way that the youngsters get some idea out of it. But the problem, and I share with you, but just a few example out there, that we have to fix.
Ronnie, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about startups, about entrepreneurship. Because different countries and different cultures have differing attitudes towards or are more or less attractive to entrepreneurship. In Japan, risk-taking is not quite as common or as popular as it is, for example, in the United States. All entrepreneurs face an array of problems, the first of which is always access to finance. But women entrepreneurs face special barriers. In some places, it's because the legislative or regulatory framework is discriminatory. In some places, it's because women don't have access to the networks that men do for attracting finance and so on. So paying attention to entrepreneurship in general and the special barriers women entrepreneurs face is very important. The OECD is doing work on this. The World Bank has done some work on this. There are networks of women entrepreneurs who are focusing on helping each other. So I think this is a very important subject and an important area.
Let me just ask you, how are legislative frameworks set up against women and women entrepreneurs?
In some countries,
In some countries.
in some countries, women are not allowed to own property in their own names. In some countries, in some parts of the world, women are not allowed to travel without permission. They may not have the personal autonomy. Now, in many cases, they find ways around this, but they're nevertheless barriers to what could be in terms of entrepreneurship.
Olivier?
Just a word. I think in France, it's starting happening. I see more and more examples of women starting their own company. I heard about conferences where only women entrepreneur raise funds in front of business angels. And I think all this new economy, all this model changing is make it easier to, I would say, not create old stereotypes. And so maybe it can be a good way to introduce a new idea of gender balance.
All right, time is quickly slipping away from us, unfortunately. So I just want to take one more question from the audience, madam.
Frances Coppola, financial writer and formerly programmer. I wondered whether the apparent polarization of women and men in scientific subjects, which you mentioned, was to do with a historical and cultural bias towards women being subtly diverted into activities that are seen as more caring, and men into activities that are seen as more producing, which is a long-term historical split. And if that's right, where the pressures are coming from and what could be done about it?
Can I talk about Japan case, right? You know, past 70 years after World War II, we have to really, after World War, you know, it's a burn country. We have to rebuild everything. That time, manufacturing, big and large, you know, road, construction, everything, and domestic demand was huge. So there have been a clear role and responsibility. Men at work, female at home, raise kids. And that's we have to do because, again, we have to rebuild the country, right? But the problem is, now, look, Japan has everything, developed country, we have everything. Yet, our mentality is living just there yet. I mean, still living in that myth. You know, men's mentality is manufacturing, you know, the big and large. And so craftsman mentality is very hard to get out. So this is my theory, and this is what I think is if we are going to brand new direction like Industry 4.0 or digital industry, maybe you put a set of a new brain there. That could be us because we have nothing to do with that success story. So that's one way. So that's another point that I think this is a chance for us to put our value onto the market, because we don't have any legacy path that we have to fight.
All right. Anyone else wants to come in on this? Because I think that, I mean, this is key. It has been key throughout all of our discussion. Alejandra.
I want to put another point, but sorry, but I think technology and all this field is a very important opportunity for women. In Chile, there is I think an important number of women that today are running startups to give a solution to social problems. And it is a very interesting link, because women, when women are engineering or when women are in this field, they are thinking about what happened in their community, in their society. And I think we must have an important role in this.
Do you think that perspective is different than a man's perspective?
I think yes. I think I read some studies that show this evidence, but I saw clearly in cases that we have in Chile that women have and lead startups that want to put solutions to social problems, like. In the area of health, of disasters, and I don't know. I think it could be a characteristic that we have because we care. I don't know, but I think it could be a good topic to put in the table.
All right, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I've got OECD staffers looking at me very, very sternly, so I don't dare to go over. I want to thank you very much indeed for participating in this panel discussion. I mean, we've talked about the necessity and the need to change cultures, to change values at a very early age. We've talked about quotas, we've talked about work-life balance. So it feels like we've covered the entire spectrum. Unfortunately, we cannot resolve this issue in an hour and a half, but we've come some way. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you to everyone in the audience, and thank you to the OECD for hosting this very important discussion. Have a great evening.